I'll start my first question with you. Um, we've heard all the sort of negative stories going on, um, all of the issues in terms of paralysis in government policy making, stalled reforms, taxation issues, and various other stuff. So, is the India emerging markets growth story really intact? And what does it hold for investment opportunities, wealth creation, and preservation in these markets?
Thanks, Raman. Actually, I think we are all aware of the challenges that there's all there in the global markets, in the local markets. What's important is to see what is structurally happening in the economy like India. First and foremost, let's understand that even if we take a base case scenario of around 6.5% growth, whatever it is, or 5.5% growth if we are a little more pessimistic on that, with 7-8% inflation, we are still, on a nominal basis, we are talking about a growth rate of 13 to 14%, which I think is not something that we can all be happy about, we can be proud about, but it's not that bad that we should be all just worried about. There's no, I mean, I think there is still chance that we can get the growth back. And more importantly, I think there is a growth still we are talking about. The challenge in the global context is whether there's a growth or recession. I think that challenge is not there for a country like India because of sheer dynamics of the economy that we have. Second thing, I think our structural growth story still remains intact. It might not have been managed properly, and we can blame for that matter anyone. But the real part is that India is still a growth economy from a structural perspective. I think we are still a demand-led economy. We still have opportunity to invest in infrastructure, and there is no dearth of demand for those infrastructure. Even when you compare India versus China, where it's an investment-led economy, export-led economy, we are still a demand-led economy. So if you can create the supply-side infrastructure, I think the demand-led economy has got far better chance to survive in challenging times than infrastructure-led economy or the supply-led economy. And that's where I would always, I'm a possibly an optimist in that nature, that I think all is not lost. And we should not be feeling so negative about that it's not going to revive and we are on a similar path as what's happening in maybe in the European world or some other markets. I think we are right now in a stage where we need to focus on what we can execute better, be it on a political side or be it on our infrastructure side or be it on a business side. We need to manage ourselves better. Coming to the wealth side, and that's I think more relevant from this perspective. So first of all, the nominal rate of growth, even if we take 12 to 15%, it's good enough. And if I just take some numbers which you quoted, and I really don't know which number to believe, but even if we take $70 to $80 billion of investable wealth, and I use some other parameters, so let's take our market capitalization, and assume 10 to 15% of that is going to be in the hands of high net worth and ultra high net worth. Another 10% would be in the mass affluent segment, and you put those numbers together, these numbers would be somewhere in the range of $70 billion to $100 billion, whichever way you put in. If you look at, I'm talking about mostly the high net worth and ultra high net worth segment, which we generally cater to. If we take the numbers of all our players put together, which are in organized sector, the number does not even add to $20 billion. So when we talk about the growth of the industry, from the current position what the market has, I mean, what the market opportunity has, there's less than 25% or less than 20% has been captured. So I keep telling in our internal meetings that competition does not lie with competition. Competition lies outside the competition. You need to grow the market and grab it for the survival of the industry and yourself. And I think that's where I think all of us have a role to play to make this pie bigger and bigger for all of us to benefit.
Thanks, Satya. So coming to you, Sudhakar, as a head of wealth management business, what are your strategies to deliver customer delight in this kind of a situation, which is not the kind of best, times. It's very challenging, but you still need to get that confidence into your customers, make sure that they're happy, deliver value addition to them with all these external variables and factors. So what would be a strategy?
Sure. Before I get there, I just want to ask one question to the audience. I just want to give a little bit of a different perspective. We are all worried. All of us are worried. But if I may ask a question to any of you, when was, before 91, when was India or Indians prosperous? Some of my colleagues know the answer, so I don't want them to. When was India or Indians prosperous? Before 91. Sorry? It was not even 1700. It was probably before that. It was probably 1600. We as a country are actually seeing wealth and prosperity after 350, 450 years. This is going to stay, It's happened now. It's just happened for the last 5 years, 10 years or so. So, yes, the environment is bad. Yes, situations are bad for the last 1 year, 2 years, maybe bad for the next 1 year or so. But that's very short-term perspective. If you look at the longer-term picture, India is, Indians are having it as good as they can get. We've never had it so good. Right? So let's look at that perspective and start, looking at a business, start looking at wealth management solution. I totally in sync with him. We've not even touched, scraped the surface of what the opportunity exists in India. And, unlike him, we service a whole range of customers, not necessarily only HNIs or ultra HNIs, even the others. I think everyone, whether this is the environment or any other environment, are really looking to people, looking to advisors who can really help them manage a situation like this.
If I can turn to you, from a different perspective, you've been in this business for long. What is the either the mass affluent retail or the HNI customer expectations today are from their advisors, wealth managers? Because as Sudhakar said, probably it has changed over a period of time because the times have changed. So if you were to sort of just reflect back, what are your customers, whether they are HNI or mass affluent, what are they expecting from the wealth managers, from the advisors?
So let me start on a lighter note, and since you talked about long years of experience. So 70s and 80s in India we had no wealth. And in the 90s we had no management. Wealth came but there was no management. So it was only in the 2000s that wealth management of the nature that we sort of hear and see today has come about. And customers have become smart. When I was hearing this discussion, one of the things which, if I think about the last 20 years that I have seen the customer evolve, is that as technology has evolved and as high quality organizations like Miles and others have come, one of the big mega trends is that the customer has become much, much smarter. So the way you deal with the customer today is very different from the way you dealt with the customer, say, a decade ago or even 5 years ago. And there's a clear list of priorities. So when I think about what do we have to do to delight a customer today, you have to have relationship managers who can understand a customer's requirements well. So I think understanding of needs, not just going and say positioning products is very important. Knowledge is very important because everybody watches CNBC, everybody watches so many other channels, they read papers, they themselves have businesses, they're doing very well, they're successful individuals, smart individuals. So you have to be knowledgeable to be able to speak to them. Genuineness of advice is very important because we've had a huge issue with, regulators have commented on it. I will not say too much about the fact that at times advice was not genuine. The other point is that customers look for consistency. So there's been this criticism that today you have one relationship manager, tomorrow you have somebody else coming, then somebody else comes and gives something else. So consistency of relationships, ensuring that there is transparency in what we are doing.
If I can sort of turn to you, you are a ultra high net worth individual and a very smart investor as well, with your knowledge of the markets, etc. I mean, do you really get the bang for your buck in terms of whatever advice that you seek or get from wealth managers, your advisors? Because I mean, the general feeling amongst many people are that, I can invest in, the mutual funds which are focused on, the large cap stocks. And if it's debt, there are some standard, good performing debt instruments available, which will give you post-tax maybe 8.25, 8.5% return. And, so by going to a wealth manager, an advisor, are you getting really a magnitude of, increase in terms of the returns on your investments, and what's the kind of, money that you have to pay to get that kind of an advice? So if you can throw some light on that, because you have lots of experience in this.
I think, Raman, you have got more experience than mine. You are also ultra UUHNI or whatever. Yeah, but I mean, unfortunately, I'm also a chartered accountant. So whenever my wealth managers, I use 3 or 4 bankers. Okay, and sometimes I play the chess game like what one man can play with Anand and Baker or whatever that other guy is, by choosing white for you and black on the other side. So, so they are playing against each other actually, and you are just winning both. So you have to play the smart. But answer to your question, not necessarily every time you get good advice. And I'm not even saying right advice, because there's nothing called right advice at any point of time. Because the only answer is right or wrong you get to know when the event happens. So you should get good advice, and what I think you said is a genuine advice, right? And genuine advice is one where you're not recommending that because your carry is more or because your commission is more, and so on and so forth. So you have to structure your deal with wealth manager in a particular way. If you do that, then his incentive to recommend wrong or biased funds gets substantially low. And I think you should develop that trust between two, a relationship that the person should feel obliged to tell you the right things, because if he doesn't or she doesn't, then there is some disincentive available to that. Unfortunately, none of these guys can guarantee on returns what they recommend. So the worst case scenario or the best case scenario in the worst situation is that they will say, sorry, you lost your money, so I'm going to lose my money, right? But value for money, I think both of us lose a lot of money to them versus what value we derive. That's what my frank opinion is. So I'm personally trying to structure, not me alone, but there are a lot of people who are trying to restructure some kind of a mechanism whereby if I make money, you make money types, right?
Thanks, Deepak. So it's appropriate that today we have Miles Software and SAP actually coming together to bridge some of the gap and offer things that both the wealth managers, advisors, as well as their customers are looking for. So I think without further ado, I would like to thank all the panelists for coming here and sharing their thoughts. It's been very insightful and very interesting. So thanks once again for your patient listening.